For this section, we're going to be talking about the slope of the line and the intercepts, and then into the slope-intercept form of a line. So one formula for finding the slope of a line, we often use the letter M, is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in other words, just subtracting the coordinates. And you got to make sure you're consistent with that. The second minus the first and the second minus the first. Another way would be rise over run. So thinking about the change in y, that's going the rise, the up and down direction, over the run, which would be the change in x. So another way of thinking about the slope would be like, oh, for every unit that x increases by 1, then y changes by some amount. So like the slope of 1/2 would be saying it goes up 1/2 over 1. Or you can also be thinking about that as being like up 1 over 2. Those are still going to be consistent if you think about it like this on a graph. If you go, say, from here, if you're at this point and you go up 1 over 2, you're on that same line as if you had gone up 1/2 over 1. You see, you're still consistent with finding another point on that same line. Couple kind of real life type of situations to help you think about this in context. If here you're talking about the slope of this line where you have x is the number of days since the stock was purchased and y is the value of the stock. So the slope, if I kind of just pick 2 points on the line that are easy to identify, you can see that it went up 1 over 2. So that's why the slope is 1/2. And how do I say that in words? Well, in terms of this, it's saying, oh, the stock went up by 1, because that's the y. So that's the value over the days. So if I were to put that in a sentence, you would say the value went up by $1 every 2 days. If I look at the one here with soccer and TV, notice they're both hours, so you got to be specific. Here you got hours playing soccer and hours watching TV. So in this case, if I identify my points here, it looks like you go down 3 over 1. So notice this one, you went down 3 over 1. So that's a negative slope. So in terms of a sentence, you could say for every hour you play soccer, right? Because remember, this is TV over soccer. So for every 1 hour of playing soccer, you watch 3 hours less of TV. For every hour of playing soccer, you watch 3 fewer hours of TV. Okay, and this last one here, if you're looking at this, the points, they don't actually go up or down at all. Okay, so in this case, this would be like a up 0 over 1, which ends up being a slope of 0, but in terms of speaking of both directions, you would say, well, let's see, this is the numerator, is the change in y, so that's cages, right? And this is dogs. So every time a new dog comes in, the number of cages remains the same. So unfortunately, that is sometimes a situation because of financial constraints and space and stuff like that. They're maxed out. Okay, I'm going to skip this one about the temperature. We've kind of done enough of those. So let's get on to the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. So in that case, if I look at like that point right there on the y-axis, what's the coordinates of that point? Well, that would be 0, 2. And if I look at the other one, 0, 8. So notice up here in this kind of blank, what is the x value going to be for any point on the y-axis? It's always going to be 0 because it's right there on the y-axis. You're not going to the left or to the right. You're just kind of either going up or down. So let's interpret these. If we're saying that the x, which is day 0, the value was $2, day 0, well, that would be the initial value of the stock. So not 1 day later, not 2 days later, not 3 days later, but the initial value. So the initial value of the stock was $2. So here we're not talking about the change of the stock. We're just talking about that specific point. Similarly, if I just kind of picked another one here, like 5, 7, well, that would be saying on day 5, the value was $7. So you can kind of describe that similarly for any point, but in particular, the y-intercept is when x is 0. And similar for the 0, 8, well, x is 0, so that means no soccer. So you could kind of say when you don't play soccer, you watch 8 hours of TV. Yes, so it's always good to have a little more activity in there. And notice like 1 hour of soccer is only 5 hours of TV. So just that 1 hour of soccer actually decreases your TV time by 3 hours, right? Because it takes time to get to the soccer field, change clothes and all that stuff. Okay, and let's do one more here. The y-intercept there, 0, 3, but in the context, it's saying that even when there are no dogs, they have 3 cages. Because those cages have to be there. When you have 1 dog, you have 3 cages. 2 dogs, 3 cages. Because remember, that number of cages did not change in this instance. And just this last one, notice there is no x-intercept, there is no y-intercept in this last one because it never crosses the y-axis. However, there is an x-intercept. And in that case, that would actually be a negative 2.50. Since it's on the x-axis now, this time the y-coordinate is 0.